Hello, is anybody here yet? I'm not too sure. Hold on one second. I'm recording right now, so. Well, hi. Okay, I think we're just going to start right in. It's you and me. This is recording. Anyways, we are going to look at chapters 5 and 6 today. They're super good, and I hope you guys are going to really enjoy this. But the first chapter is called I Am Responsible for My Responses. And this is going to be a really good time going through how to teach and train children and ourselves to take responsibility for the way that we respond to the different situations in our lives. So let's just jump right in here. We have a lot to cover in an hour, and we had to move the time up, so I think we'll have some people joining us late. But my sister has a sign hanging in her bathroom, and I love it. And it says that I am looking at the person responsible for my happiness. And I think that that is such a great reminder that you are responsible for your responses. But good relationships aren't about controlling others or manipulating other people, or making people, even your kids, into the people that you want them to be. It's about looking in the mirror at the end of the day and knowing that one day at a time, you lived your life the best you could, making the most you could from the circumstances in your life. And you weren't distracted by things that weren't in line with your maximized divine destiny. Realizing that you're in control of your responses and able to maximize your potential despite what other people choose, even if those other people are your toddlers, your adult children, your teenagers, or your spouse. So if you're going to teach your children how to respond correctly to their frustrations, we want to learn to respond correctly to our own frustrations, which incidentally can sometimes be our children, right? But by learning to handle our response ability, which is, then we can help our kids handle theirs. The first thing I think is that's super important, even and especially while your children are young, is to earn your children's trust. If your kids don't trust you, really trust you, they will not be able to learn from you, knowing that your decisions are made with their best interests in mind. But our kids' trust is very important to me. You have to work hard to earn it. And it starts when they're super little. I have literally counseled people and helped people where their kids had long-term problems with their parents because they felt that their parents didn't have their back or think the best of them. This is really important, and it can start super young. I've taught so many kids, and literally all different ages, and I've had their parents come up to me right in front of their children, even in 4th and 5th grade, and say, you know what, my kid's really slow to catch on, right with their child there. And I would just shrink inside for their kids. So there's some things that you can do purposefully to earn your kids' trust. The first thing is, do not speak negatively about your children to other people. Not in front of them and not behind their backs. Now, if you're going to someone to get counsel or something, that would be a different story. If you're mentoring with somebody, I know a lot of times I problem solve with people, and we go through different situations. They're going through month by month for a while, but that's one thing. But your child should never hear you speak negatively about them to other people. It has just I can't even go through the long-term consequences of that. But a lot of times people will live up to what you expect of them. And if you are going over your child's failures or their mistakes, it's just so dishonoring. And it is just so humiliating, and really it doesn't deserve their trust. And same thing with your spouse, actually. But also, don't share the secrets they tell you. If they tell you something they're going through, don't go and casually share it with another person. A lot of times I will, if my kids come to me, I'll give them impartial advice. Usually it's from the standpoint of the other person. Sometimes they don't like that. They say, you're never on my side. But I say, you already know your side. I'm giving you the other side. So that's always good. I like one of the things that my kids have started doing with their kids, when they'll put them to bed, they'll say, okay, I'm just going to give you a few minutes while I'm putting you to bed, and you won't get in trouble, but is there anything that you want to talk about right now that you won't get in trouble for it? I just want you to be able to share your heart with me, something maybe that you did that you're sorry for, today, and something you just want to get off your heart. And that has been very successful in opening up a lot of avenues for them to have deeper talks with their kids at night when the other kids aren't around and their kids feel free and stuff to talk with them. So also, when your children are talking to you, and we're training them not to interrupt, but when they do really talk to you, give them your full attention and let them know that what is important to them is important to you. My Bible tells me that when I'm overwhelmed, I can go to the rock that's higher than me, and I really love that. And so I've always let my kids know that, a lot of times people say, well, they just tell them to work it out. God doesn't do that with me. He says, when I'm overwhelmed, I can go to him. So I like to tell my children when they're getting overwhelmed or they don't know how to handle things. When I was raising them, I said, then you come and get me and we'll look at the right thing to do and how to work through something. So really, earn their trust that way and have their backs. Believe the best about your children, until even before you clarify a situation with them. If they make a mistake, treat it as a mistake. Don't say, as you're picking them up from the nursery, yeah, they always bite. They're so out of control. I don't even know how to handle them, or anything that is so derogatory. Your children understand what you're saying about them so much earlier than they can even talk. So they understand language, and they might not remember like situations or events, but they will remember the way that they were made to feel. So a lot of times if you make your child ashamed or make them feel shame or guilt, they will remember that feeling. And if it's carrying on too long, it can become a very negative part of their personality. And so you really want to let them know that you have their backs. Also, I will not side against them. Like if they've made a mistake, I always say, we're not problem makers, we're problem solvers. And we'll look at how to fail forward and learn from that mistake and I call it put some dust on it, and try to put it so far in the past that we don't have to think about it. So also they need to know that you're more concerned about their welfare than your reputation. That really came in big with me because I had a few kids that were very vocal, and some of them would throw temper tantrums if we were going to leave someplace but they weren't happy. And you know what, it was I wasn't as worried about what people thought of me or how they looked at me. Trust me, I had 5 kids, so a lot of times you'd hide behind the award when you went to pick up the next kid because they're all different, but you never want to discipline your kids on behalf of who's watching you. Like over discipline them because someone's watching you or because you feel like you're under someone else's microscope at a place of business. A lot of times take them to the side and, treat your children with respect. Even if you start that with a really young age, they will learn to respect you as well when they have some things to say to you when they're teenagers and there's people around too. So I just feel like that's just respect that starts early, and you can build really nicely on that. So just respect them. If you have something to say to them, say, you know what, come here in the other room. I had somebody over here for dinner, and the dad had to discipline one of the kids, and he said, you know what, come over here in the other room. I need to talk to you there. So I just think that's really respectful. just give your kids the respect that you would like. You don't want to be corrected in front of people, and just make sure that you're just showing them respect so that they can learn to trust you, that you are for their good, and for them to learn to do better, and you're not all about just what you look like because of their behavior or misbehavior. Also, be the same wherever you're at and who you're with. If you have a best foot forward, put it forth at home where the people have to deal with all of you. Like, I don't believe in giving my best to people who don't see me all the time. Like, if people think that I'm great at church or when I'm out at my workplace or something, that's fine, but they don't see me when things get hard. Like, if my children think that I am amazing, now to me, that is even more honorable and more trustworthy than anybody else, because they see me at my best, they see me at my worst, right? So I feel like, you want to put your best foot forward with your children. You want to discipline them in a way that they can respect that discipline. After all, in the Bible, it does let us know that it's God's kindness that leads us to true repentance and change, isn't it? So if we really want our kids to have a heart for change and to really want to change their heart if they're on a wrong path, it's going to be our kindness that leads to that. We have all kinds of tools that we're going to go through that can show you how to discipline with kindness and concern and care and respect. You don't have to be, crazy to discipline. And I feel like that's going to give you the respect that when you have teenagers, they're going to respect you and know that you walk the talk. It's not just like when you go out, or in fact, I had teenagers call me when they were in college and they were just shocked. They were at Christian colleges, and the one was, and called and said, I can't believe when I go to people's house, they're not the same as I thought they were from seeing them in public. So it's just, excuse me, I had a little dust in my nose, but it's just that we have to just be careful that our kids can respect that we are who we say we are. And I think that is huge, especially when you have teenagers. If your teenagers will respect you, you're going to have so much of an easier time with your teenagers. And actually, Larry Robinson, I remember reading a book about statistics, and people were saying at the time, like, oh, Christians have the same level of divorce and the same level of kids having problems and all this stuff. And he said, in his book, he said, yes, unless they're in the Word. And the Christians that really are in the Word daily and take their relationship with Christ seriously, and really walk it, they do not have the same statistics. So we want to be above the statistics. Jesus gave us a lot of promises, and he also gave us a lot of conditions to those promises. If we want to turn away wrath, we can't add fuel to the fire. The Bible's very specific about that. He says, don't add fuel to the fire. He says to, put a wise man will stop the contention and pursue peace and seek peace. And it's going to be the soft answer that turns away wrath, right? So we want to get a hold of the scriptural principles and really try to live the Word in our homes. And, all those fruits of the Spirit are most evident when they're tested. You aren't going to find all those gifts that God gives you, like long suffering, gentleness, goodness, patience, meekness, which is power under control, right? All those fruits of the Spirit and all the gifts of the Spirit are attributes that we give away when we're tested. So go back and desire those better things, and desire those fruits and gifts of the Spirit, so that when we're having controversy and problems, that we can respond correctly with the fruit of the Spirit that Christ puts inside of us when we walk in fellowship with him. So the difference between a correct response and an incorrect response. Well, the first thing is, a lot of times people will never confront somebody with a hot topic. They're afraid, or they'll just jump right in and handle things the wrong way. But however that you respond or don't respond. I want you to know that there's a lot of ways that are wrong in responding to trials and problems and people that seem to be cutting into your plans for the day. You know, some people are so afraid they'll make a mistake that they never try anything new too. So we want to try a different kind of response to our irritations. You know, it's interesting too. This reminds me of a time when I was really seeking God about how to discipline one of my kids out of the 5. And I felt like God put a word on my heart, like, you need to respond to her with the fruit of the Spirit. And I was like, how do I do that? And this is what I'm sharing with you now, is the result of that soul searching question. I'm like, how do I respond? And I just felt like God, you know, just spoke to me to do that. And I felt like I was, and then I just was in one of the beds with one of the kids, and the other child that I was talking and praying about said something. I said, shh, I'm with somebody else. You need to be quiet. And it was real quiet, but yet just the harshness, even at that decibel, was enough to just pour like cold water on her. So as I started to seek the Lord, he gave me all these different ways to respond to her. And it was funny because I had gone to church. We had gone to church on a Wednesday night, and this girl was going for her dissertation and at college. And she said, do you want to read my dissertation? It's how to avoid lashing out at your child. And I was like, wow, that's God confirming that it doesn't have to be loud for a child to feel lashed out at, and how to, and how to just, you know, really to learn to discipline my kids with the fruit of his Spirit. You know, there's going to be a lot of mistakes. We need to get ready for them. Know they're going to happen. We're playing a tennis game. When you're playing a tennis game, you know what those mistakes are called? They're called faults. So, you know, you say, it's your fault, it's my fault. You know, in tennis, the game doesn't stop when somebody has a fault. The game keeps going. That's how a game is won, is by working through the faults. And, you know, and interesting, when you're playing score, they also say love. So it's kind of interesting that we, you know, that love, it starts with love, and that's what enables you to play through the faults, right? To get to the end of the game. Okay, so we want to keep that in mind. But we want to learn how to communicate correctly so we can come out of disagreements more unified and stronger. You know, conflict management, mediation, all these things that in the business world, those are big skills that are paid good money for, because people don't know how to handle problems right. They don't know how to express themselves, and they don't know how to work through them to correct resolution. And that's what we want to model to our kids with our spouse. And we want to train our children conflict resolution amongst each other. And so Jesus broke down the wall of hostility between people, and he expects us to know how to make and maintain peace as his children. I love it. In Matthew 5:9, it says, you're blessed when you can show people, I'm going to say children, you're blessed when you can show your children how to cooperate instead of competing or fighting. That's when you discover who you really are and your place in God's family. I love that. So here's some of the things to think about when you're doing some responses. A correct response wouldn't involve you sinning in the process, wouldn't involve you calling names, wouldn't involve you downgrading another person, wouldn't involve you wanting your own way. It should involve you wanting God's way and God's best. A correct response should consider the other person's feelings and timing. I should mention too, it's a lot of times timing can be off, and it'll throw the whole outcome off. Also, it should work towards a desired outcome. I've learned just from teaching these classes, I've learned that whenever I start into something that's kind of confrontational, whether it's with my kids, my spouse, anything, any person, I give myself a little pause and I ask myself, what do I want to gain from this confrontation, from this discussion? What do I want to gain? What do I want to come out of it with? And you know, just that pause can help you to establish the reason you're having the conversation and can turn the whole conversation around. What we want to do in a conversation is we want to enjoin someone closer to ourselves. We want to take a lasso and we want to wrap it around the other person and bring them closer. If we're pushing them further away, that is not a constructive conversation. That is not a constructive problem solving. We want to be stronger as a result of solving the problems. Also, it allows other people to have their own opinion. You know, when we're getting into a confrontational situation or correcting situation, something that we've been bothered about with our spouse or our kids or boss or whatever, we want them to be able to have their own opinion and their own perspective. You know, a perspective is a very important part of the game. So if the ref thinks you're going off sides and you're not going off sides, their call is still part of your game. And that's the way it is with, you know, our spouses. And so we want to consider the other person's opinions. Now, obviously, when you're dealing with your children at different ages, they have the entitlement to different amounts of an opinion. You know, sometimes I would say, I love that idea, put it in the suggestion box under the kitchen sink. Like it wasn't gonna, you know, that's the garbage. So, but then there's other times when I'd let them, you know, give me a piece of information that maybe I didn't know. It wasn't like they were allowed to just come up with a whole barrage of, you know, opposing thoughts, but they were allowed to tell me something that I needed to consider. Then I would really try to consider that. So also, there's the old HALT rule. This is when you don't communicate. When you're hungry, when you're angry, when you're lonely, or when you're tired. You know, when you get to see someone at the end of the day, or maybe your kids have gone through a really hard day at school and they come home and they're exhausted, or you're exhausted, not the time to work through problems, okay? You've got to handle things. You know, the good thing about working through problems, it's kind of like the same thing that you learn about meals. Like you can eat again, you don't have to eat everything at the same meal. You get to eat 3 times a day. You know, you're going to see these people the next day. You know, we are there. We've committed till death does us part. Everything doesn't have to be handled in the next 5 minutes. You know, you learn to have a little bit of better timing. And with your kids too, you know, respect their timing. Sometimes it's not an appropriate time to communicate with your kids. Say, you know what, we're going to discuss that later. You know what, this is something we're going to take this up later. I had to do that a lot, and especially as they get older. Right now, I know a lot of you guys have little ones that are in your homes, but a lot of times things will happen at a game or when you're out and they're with their friends, and you'll see something that needs to be addressed, and, you know, pulling them aside. It doesn't have to all be handled that minute, just respecting their timing and saying, you know what, we're going to handle this later. And, you know, that just is respect for the other person's timing. Also, if you're overloaded, give yourself some downtime so that when you communicate, that you can communicate in a simple way, that you're not having your adrenaline pumping. That is never a good time to communicate. Whenever you put somebody on the defense, not a good time to communicate. You know, you've got to really find the timing. You're setting yourself up for a misunderstanding. The goal is to bring out the best in others in a conversation, not put them down, not cut them out. And that's actually Colossians 4:6 in the Message. That's good. Our goal is never to control our children. It isn't just for them to do right. We want our children to want to do right. I have walked alongside of people who had like this scaring tactic with their kids, and they would scare the daylights out of their kids. They would yell and freak out. You could see their kids would literally just cower and be so afraid of them. And whenever they were around, their kids were awesome. But whenever they weren't around, their kids they didn't really have respect for the rules or know the reasons for the rules. And it was really easy for them to disobey the rules. And as those kids got older and the parents are like going crazy, it's really easy for teenagers to turn around and go, wow, she is whack, you know, and they never address their own behavior because of the way that those things are handled. So we are admonished to, it says in the Bible, Proverbs 22:6, Point your kids in the right direction. When they're old, they won't be lost. We want to help those kids to be the best that they can be. We want to influence and impact and position our family to obey God and do right and be blessed of God. And that is from scripture about Abraham. We want God to know that we are going to influence and impact and position our family, put them in the right position so that they can be blessed. We don't want to hide our light under a bushel. We don't want to lose our effectiveness. And we don't have to be cool and go along with anything that our kids decide that they want to do. We want to hold on to a standard. I only wanted what was good for my kids' futures. If something wasn't going to be good for them, I didn't want it for them. And even when they were little, they learned that what I wanted for them was for their good. That's really important, you know. What do your kids see that you're shocked at, by the way? Like, show your kids certain standards that they can hold on to. Do your kids know, and are they, can they count on the fact that you're shocked at evil, that you don't want to see evil, you don't want to watch, you know, movies that are not good for our minds and our souls? Like, hold on to God's standards for living. And don't say that what the Bible says isn't good, is good, or is okay, or make excuses about it. I take God's word seriously, and I believe it applies to us today. And now people think anything goes. Don't let your kids think that your standards change just because the people you care about have decided to change their standards. Also, believe the best about people. No matter how bad the situation or the problem, or no matter how someone's reacting, choose to believe the best and pray through. Your kids will count on that. And they will know that they will be that recipient of you believing the best about them too. Also, feed your kids good things. I say, don't poison your kids. You know, a lot of times, I wish that parents would be as worried about the things that they poison their kids' thoughts and minds with, about the way they talk about other people. Like, that is so injurious with your kids. It's poisoning love. You know, if they hear negative words from you about them, and a lot of negative, so many kids will tell me when I'm trying to help them through a situation, I've lived with so much negativity in my life. It comes from their parents. That is not good. It was crazy. Today, I was actually at my mom's, and somebody had called and asked for a book that I had written, both for my mom and then one for my dad, that just said all their sayings and the things I learned from them. So I pulled them out, and I started looking through it, and I think, what a beautiful heritage I have. You know, my mom did always look for the best in people. She always did love everybody. She always did see people as better than who they were. I'm living as part of a legacy that shows that the way that you live in front of your children and the way that you fight to live a godly example in front of your kids will be brought forward to the second and third generation, the Bible says. So we've got to fight to live that standard in front of them. We have to stop making excuses for sloppiness. We have to know that that same spirit that raised Christ from the dead lives in us to empower us to have that soft answer that'll turn away wrath, to speak good, you know, to have that long suffering, that patience when we're trying to homeschool these kids. It takes so much patience, I know. But you know what? You have that in you. And it's time to make a call on all that's in you to live it out in front of those kids so that they can see and be empowered with that same spirit that is inside of them that will empower them to live the life that God has for them. And we can live that out and not make excuses for it. So we don't want to poison creativity in our children either by letting them watch the television or letting them turn on their phone. I found I took a picture of it because I wanted to read it to you guys. If I could find it right away, I will. But now that I took all those pictures of those books this afternoon, oh, here it is. I find myself worrying that when we hand our children phones, we steal their boredom from them. As a result, we're raising a generation of writers who will never start writing, artists who will never start doodling, chefs who will never make a mess in the kitchen, athletes who will never kick a ball against a wall, musicians who will never pick up their dad's guitar and start strumming. You know, it's okay for your kids to have to find some things to do sometimes. Like, don't destroy their creativity. Let them be creative. Don't poison creativity. Don't poison forgiveness by showing them that you don't forgive people in your family. Don't poison love by letting them hear you speak negatively about people, God's people. So we want to let our sons and daughters count on certain things that they can know they're going to find with us. Things that I knew I could find with my parents, that they would see the best in my friends, even when they made a mistake, that they would give me forgiveness if I made a mistake, that they would teach me how to stand on my mistakes, to go forward and to make something out of them and leave them behind, that they would always think the best of me. You know, one of the most important things that you do as parents is, you know, it says in Isaiah 7:15, that he may know to refuse the evil and choose the good. I love what Andrew Murray said. He said, of all the wonderful powers with which God has endowed man, his will, the power of determining what he does and so what he is the most wonderful. It is the deepest trait of the divine image. You know, he gave man to a very large extent the power of deciding for ourselves. And you guys as parents have been entrusted with the solemn task of teaching your child how to use his will the right way. When I saw that that is your highest and most blessed work, your child needs to be trained to know how to refuse the evil and choose the good. And again, remember what that word evil in scripture means. It's the word paneros. It means something that's harmful in effect or influence. It's something that's harmful to me is what God calls evil. And you know, that's what your kids need to know, that it's those things that are going to hurt them that you call evil or wrong. And they need to know why, and you need to give them the reasons, you know, why. Help them to want to do the right thing, not just to do the right thing when you're there. Help them to know the reasons. I had one of my little granddaughters came up and she said, oh, my finger hurts. And she had been kind of picking at it. And, you know, I wanted to tell her why that was so bad. I said, you need to look at me. That's so dangerous. God gave your skin as a protector. And when you take that protection off, you know, that leaves your body open for infection and everything like that. And I was restating something that her own mom had told her, but just to let her know the reason why, not just because I said so. Those days are gone. We have too many confused teenagers for those kind of responses anymore. We want our kids to know why we make the rules. And even when my kids got older and they were the first ones that were required to be home, I'd say, you know what, leave people wanting more of you, not getting sick of you because you stayed out half the night with them. You know, I'd say that's okay. You just get home. You know, my kids had to be home at midnight, 12:30 max, even when they were seniors at a homecoming or something, and I picked them up. But it's just really important that you give them the reason you're making the rules so that they understand that. Sometimes your children will have a visible face change, and you'll see that they want to choose the wrong thing. I've even told my kids and my grandkids, like, no, you don't want to have a black heart. We want a sparkly heart. I had a couple of them say, I want a black heart. You know, when they go through this thing, they just want to get in trouble, you know, and then I would just get really sad, like God would be with me. And I'd just be like, I'm so sorry, because now that means that you can't do the privileges, because it says in the Bible, the way of a transgressor is hard. Now I can't give you the rewards that you get when you're obeying and doing the right thing. So now you've got to stand over there, and while we're going to be making cookies in here, And then I sure hope you change your mind. And then, you know, they'll stand in there a little while later like, oh, I want a sparkly heart, you know. But we've got to think of all those fun and creative ways to help our kids to want to do the right thing. And a lot of times, seriously, it's really fun to brainstorm with other parents that are doing a good job, or someone who's raised their kids like I have, or get ideas from books. But you know where the best source is? Find out what God does with you. And that has just been a great source for me. Like I'll say, well, what does God do for me? Oh, he makes it really hard for me to do the wrong thing, because he shuts up heaven, he shuts up earth. You know, he gives his blessings to the just and the unjust, but his rewards are not given to the unjust. His rewards are given to the righteous. And I'd take my kids to Deuteronomy 28 and 29, even really young, and say, look at, when you're not obeying, we can't do those things. And make it hard for them to disobey. Make them want to obey. I would put up a game or a little thing of Smarties and say, okay, if we get to nap right away, we can do this. Oh no, now we can't do that. I had good plans for you, but you cut into those plans, showing them that God's plans for us are to give us a great end. What are we going to do to stop him from doing that? But, we need to be teach them the true north. The earlier you teach them to know the blessings and the joys of the right thing is to deny themselves, to consider others, and to live with purpose, the more they'll be able to process the impact that wrong decisions have. Also, make sure that they know that their mistakes don't define them. When they do make a mistake, make it easy for them to jump back in. It should always cost them something, because I believe that when we fall short, I believe it always costs us something. But with our goodness and our inspiration, we want to come alongside them and show them how to, go forward and to put that mistake behind them. So let me see. And don't be overwhelmed at failure. A lot of times we have different kind of kids, and even ourselves. Teach our kids. I know one mom would say, did you fail at anything today? And the kids would say, no, well, you didn't try anything hard then. A lot of kids, they only want to do what they're good at with the subjects or anything. Like if your child is learning subtraction, for example, and makes a mistake, say, well, look at that. You made a mistake because you tried something really hard. And if you keep trying that, you're going to get better and better at it. That just means you're growing. And show them how to not beat themselves up over every single mistake so that they can't learn something new because they're not good at it. Do you know what I'm saying? That's kind of a really important thing. Also, tell them that, if you made a mistake, that's okay. We're going to just do the best we can, and we maybe won't make that mistake again. I had one little granddaughter over today, and she didn't want to finish her paper because she had one little line outside of the line. I said, that's okay. And guess what I have for people who make mistakes? I have a little bit of whiteout. So we whited it out, and we kept on going. And we want to teach them God's principles of God's whiteout, and teach them that he can white out our mistakes as we grow forward too. Yeah, we need more. God's got an endless supply of whiteout. We just want to fall into the mistake and not live in it. So, the Bible's full of wisdom, though, and responding correctly. Let everything you say be kind. In the multitude of words, transgression won't lack. Sometimes it's better just to shut up. Easier to shut up than sweep up, too. Watch your tongue so it doesn't land you in trouble while people are doing wrong about you. We just went over in my relationships class, Psalm 39. It's about holding your mouth even from speaking good sometimes. Sometimes just knowing the right time to talk. Be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. I'm a visual learner, and I put some really good visual tips, like, keeping a fire extinguisher by if you have a problem talking too much or too loud. Keep some duct tape on your counter during the homeschool so that you can remember But a rubber band, keep it around your wrist and snap it on yourself a few times to remind yourself to stretch yourself a little bit. So, I mean, there's some really good tips in the book on page 110. I don't want to get into it too much because there's some really good tips in there, but I want you to go through that and just maybe read that poem on page 113, if that's a great poem to read to your kids, and teaching your kids to be, that leaders are learners, and leaders, they have to be good followers. So teaching your kids to be good followers. Also for your own good and God's glory, what do your kids see how you accept other people's authority in your lives? And a lot of times, again, it's putting words to your actions. Like, you might even just be stopping at a yellow light and say to your kids, see, the light's yellow, but we need to stop because if we go, it could turn red and we could put other people in danger. And just giving them the whys, even when you're in the way. Do they see you, exercise your freedom by serving God and not breaking rules? We're going to obey this rule. It says, don't do that. We're not walking on the grass then. We'll walk around. Do they see that you treat people with dignity, even the people you don't agree with? That you love your spiritual family. And, do they hear you say, you know what? That's someone I love. I can't hear bad things about them. I don't want to hear bad things about people I love. You know what? That's our church family. We can't say those things. We have to respect and honor them, even when we don't agree with them. And there's good things that you can do that. One of my favorite words in raising kids is discipline. Discipline coupled with vision and goals helped me to achieve every noteworthy thing that I've ever done in my life. I've memorized books of the Bible. I've memorized concertos. I've done marathons. I've done, anything, teaching Sunday school classes and volunteering at the Gildas with 5 little kids. You know what? Discipline is what is going to get you places. Discipline is going to enable you to do something out of the ordinary. We need to teach our kids that discipline, self-denial, and self-control and making good choices, those aren't bad words. Those are power words. And when we say, come on, we're in the Lord's army, yes, sir, and teach them, you know what did you give up today to help somebody else? And make a big deal if you see your kids like giving up something to give it to someone else. We do that in our family. If we see a child just all of a sudden just going up to someone and sharing, we stop everything and call attention to say, wow, don't you feel so good that you just did that? That is so grown up. I can't believe that. Do you know how happy and proud I am and how proud Jesus is of you to give that up for that person? The antonym of discipline is chaos. That's what we're seeing in the world today, isn't it? Chaos, lawlessness, someone who balks at authority. It's more important than ever that we incorporate discipline. It says that the Bible says if we don't deny ourselves daily, we're not worthy of him. What did you deny yourself today? Hopefully you moms that are homeschooling, hopefully you denied yourself something that you could have said but didn't about you always or your driving or something. Hopefully, that you've learned to discipline yourself and deny yourself, even to say something that shouldn't be said. Though that's a great start. And then you can move on to different ways. There's 10 ways to incorporate discipline into your life. And I really strongly advise you guys to get into this book on chapter 6 and challenge yourself and write down opportunities to deny yourself. And there's a few ideas there, and you can write your things that you can challenge yourself with. This book is so good to have different goals of what you want to do to incorporate these lessons into your life. And then more importantly, I should say, just as importantly, into your children's lives. So this will give you an independent sheet just to jot a few ideas down with some, starters that will make it really fun for you to bring these lessons home. But the first thing is list some areas in your life where you want or need more discipline. You can, and all the areas are listed in the book: physical, social, spiritual, organizational, family, mental, educational. Then give yourself small changes to get to the next level. No one goes from the bottom of the bleachers all the way to the top bleacher. You go one bleacher at a time when you're walking up, right? So don't be too hard on yourself. Make a few little plan and walk up to the next level, and then you can go to the next level. Also, embrace opportunities. If you're, even in those little things, if you're walking through the house and you see something needs to be done, you know what? I'm doing it right now. I'm going to put that away now. Instead of putting something at the top of the steps, I might go, I'm going to bring it down and put it away now. I'm not going to let those dishes dry on the counter. I'm going to put them away now. Those are all little opportunities that you say, no, I am going to discipline myself. I'm going to deny myself. I always say, if not me, who? If not now, when? When are you going to volunteer? When are you going to help out? When are you going to help somebody else? When are you going to do something for someone? Are you going to wait till your life is together? Good luck with that. You'll never do anything for someone. So, I mean, seriously, really look for ways that you can, deny yourself and things like that. Now, I know I was actually just talking to Jessica. I know sometimes people need to learn to say no more too. So you might be denying yourself too much. Then you have to say, okay, maybe I have to deny myself the ability to volunteer as much too sometimes. So it's all keeping a really strong perspective. And every single one of those, right, is a perspective. Like if you're finding that you're not able to, get to the other things, it might be denying yourself to not volunteer and help so many people. So really just finding that balance and everything else. Also, learn to enjoy others' things without having to own everything yourself. That is such a winner. Just because you love your friend's pool doesn't mean you need one. And I'm telling you the thing I learned, because we bought a house with a pond, and I said to my husband, we should just dig a hole and throw money in it every time we walk by it, because it is just so much money, so much maintenance. Finally, I got him to fill it in with dirt, and we closed it up. No more pond. I said, we will go enjoy the ponds at weekends or wherever we go. We will walk around ponds. We don't have to own everything to enjoy it. So, kind of set yourself free, because it's not what you purchase, it's what you have to maintain. And that is a discipline. Avoid having the latest and greatest of everything, and learn to have fun without spending money. Look at the things that you do, like going and splitting a hot fudge sundae. Your kids don't need a whole hot fudge sundae. We would go and we would just all get a spoon and split it up. And those are such fun memories. We would, take the kids and go to the park, and I'd close their eyes at this time of year and go, okay, open your eyes. Oh, it's fall, and pick up the leaves and throw them in the air and jump in the leaves, and just all those wonderful things that you can do that don't cost a lot of money. That's discipline, and it really goes a long way. Capitalize whatever season you're in, calendar-wise and age-wise. And I can tell you, like, whatever the season is in, my dad and mom, that was in the book that I read today at my mom's too. Just whatever season you're in, loving it. Going on, pulling your kids on a sled, even though it might take longer to get them ready to go outside than the time that you stay outside, do it anyways. Wait till their cheeks get cold and bring in the hot chocolate. But, also don't require the most grandiose fashion and have to be hung up on name brands. Find ways to make your normal days special. That was in my mom's book. It said that you don't have to go on vacation to live and feel like you're on a vacation. She made her everyday life like a vacation. Also, save some activities for special events in your kids' lives. Don't overdo things when your kids are little, and you won't have to keep living up to that as they get older. Kids don't need more than 3 gifts on Christmas, and you have to overdo everything. And then they get to be teenagers and they're looking for a pile of gifts. So it's not seeming right. It's something that the parents do to ruin it themselves, not the kids. And so we really want to teach them, simplicity, in that we get our joy from events, not necessarily from all the things. You can make set budgets for things they need. Teach them how to chip in. You know, I worked for a lawyer, and a lot of the lawyers gave their kids anything they wanted. And my boss, I learned so much from him. I just loved him so much. And I'm so glad I have a grandson named that it's the same name as him. So I think of him often, but he was a very high integrity man. And he didn't give his kids cars. He made his kids earn half their car. He made his kids work. So when all the other lawyers were paying their kids money to go like discover whatever they wanted to do, my boss's kids were in the law firm working and earning money. And I'm going to tell you, that taught me so much. And I made sure that even when we would go roller skating, I'd say to my kids, you know what? Everyone's got to chip in a quarter or 50 cents. They didn't get much of an allowance then. And they'd go, I don't really want to. And I go, well, if it's not worth 50 cents to you, it's not worth $3 to me. And that's where we are a lot of times. We are paying a full thing for kids that it's really not worth anything to them. We're giving our kids things before they even know they want them. We're denying them the ability to want something and work towards it and have the achievement of having earned it because we're putting it in their laps. It is really a mess. You're not creating anything good from that. Even when my kids were going to get their bike, they had to pay towards their bikes. They had to do it. And honestly, I think my kids were so much wiser because of that. I loved when all the parents were just buying their kids whatever to go to the dances or the proms. And I gave my kids a budget, and it was a pretty low end budget. And they would buy a dress for $15 when other kids were spending as much as they would probably spend on a wedding dress. And honestly, the difference in the kids, I am just so proud of my kids for the way that they are, because I didn't give them the ability. I didn't just put everything in their laps. You want your kids to work for them. I always say, the less you give your kids, the more you're going to like them. And I still gave my kids a lot, but I gave them a lot of wisdom and love and experiences together. I didn't just put things in their lap or deny them the ability to work for something and learn that they could work towards goals and achieve them. That is something you do not want to take away from your kids. Also, use discipline. A lot of times parents realize too late that the kids, they don't have any purpose in their lives, and they're so bored. They're always getting into mischief. So teach them to chip in, teach them to love limits, teach them to love the rules. Give your kids items at their home that, no, you don't touch that. We don't eat in there. We don't eat in this part of the car. We don't. Teach them consideration for others, and then you can take them out, and they're going to be really good when you take them out, because they're good in your home. You're going to bring who you are at home out. You're not going to go try to put on a show somewhere. You're practicing it at home and then bringing it out. And if you don't find yourself being able to bring it out, then bring it back at home and say, you know what? We need to practice our table manners. So we're going to work on that this week. And every day you sit down, no, put your napkin in your lap. Don't try to teach your kids because you took them out to eat and everyone's watching you. Teach them at home and over and over. Oh, you need more practice coming when I call you. So whenever I call you, you're going to have to drop everything and come. Oh, you didn't finish the job, so I'm going to have to add 2 more jobs to you till you need practice in finishing the job. Then call me and let me inspect it. But you need to show them that you're practicing at home and you're bringing who you are out into the public. If your kids don't get along with each other, give them something else that they need to do with each other. I mean, if you go to work and you're not getting along with someone, they don't give you your own office. They teach you to get along together. You're stuck in a cubicle. Make them play a game together. Make them do each other's chores. Say, okay, you two aren't getting along. What's your plan? Because here you're going to play this memory game together. Or you're going to play this. When you can play together without fighting, then we'll move on. We'll add some friends or cousins or whatever. But, even if you're also, don't just have your discipline is to train, not punish. Know the difference of punishment and discipline. For example, if let me give you an example. Say that, well, I gave you the example with the playing the game, but say your child isn't willing to share with others. You don't just rip their toy from them and give it to the other kid. That is punishment. I don't know what that is. That's just wrong. But, you're bigger than them, so you can take it. No, that's punishment. Your child is going to resent that type of parenting and more likely become more selfish and not want to share. You're not going to get any end result. What you can do is go with them and look through their possessions when their friends and cousins are gone and say, okay, what items can we share? Okay, let's put these other items that aren't appropriate to share. No offense, I don't share everything. I'm not sharing my good sewing machine. So I'm not sharing my personal computer. But there's some things I'll share with you. But then put the things you're not willing to share away when the friends come over, and teach your child that they can have some things that they have to exercise stewardship over, good stewardship over, that they don't necessarily have to share, but there's other things that they are willing to share. Teach them to go through their stuff and share with people that don't have enough, give them extra practice. And if you say no and they're not listening, say, oh, you must need to learn to hear no. I'm going to have to say no a lot until I hear you say, okay, mom, okay, dad. Then I know you got enough practice. So say no for a while until they learn how to do that. But these are some good ideas. Teach your children the value of money, and that the money represents their dad's life, their mom's life, that you're not going to just spend it. Raise financially savvy kids. Give them maybe a quarter for each year that they are, and give them some chores to do. That way they can start learning. I'd give them, they'd have to give, they get like $1.50 or $2 a week, but they'd have to do 10% to God, 10% to savings, and then they would get to spend or save 80%. And then if they didn't do their chores, I docked them and took their quarters. But that's teaching them when they're little, and it's a good thing. But and use parables to teach lessons. I think parables are really, really good things to, they can really teach character. A lot of times if your kids, you tell them a story about yourself, I tell them the story about how when this girl, everyone was mean to her at school, but my mom taught me not to ever be mean to anybody, and I was super nice to her. And then years later, and I draw it out much more obviously, but years later, when my baby was in intensive care, that was the girl that was in charge of her in intensive care, and how God used that. I was always kinder, and she remembered me for that. And I was so happy I wasn't unkind. And, just kind of teaching them stories through parables and bringing it down to their level, but where they can feel the heart of it. Discipline, dedication, mastery, self-denial, difficult, and criticized in indulgent cultures, it's still the cornerstone of success and contentment. When things threaten, it's going to be that discipline, that self-denial that'll get your kids through. I am so glad that you guys joined me today. And I know it was really hard. I know we have the vice presidential debate right now, so I had to have it earlier. And I know it's always a struggle to get to the computer, but I really had to go through that a little bit faster because there was so much to cover. But I just want to encourage you to at least pick up your workbook and go to either lesson 5 or 6. I would probably say 6, and get at least a few things that you can jot down to really challenge yourself to bring some of these things alive to your kids right where they're at, and even into our own lives right where we're at. I think that will be well worth the time investment that you guys did if you could just bring that into your life right now. So thanks a lot. Let's just pray, okay? Dear Lord, I just thank you for each person that took the time out of their busy schedule to be here. Lord, just like we said in today's lessons, leaders are learners, and we came to learn so that we can effectively lead our families, our children, even the others in our lives, that we can show them things that we're learning. Lord, I just ask that you would just give each person here a special thing to work on this week, to just multiply their investment of this time in their families, multiply and let it come to a big harvest. The seeds that they sowed by being here, let it bring a harvest this week in each home. And let us come next week with a praise report and a story to tell about it. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, thanks, you guys. See you.